Hey guys, welcome to day 4 of Photoshop Essentials. So this is the last day in the course. It's also going to be the most different day. The past 3 days have been about photo editing and manipulation, and we've taught you some photography principles, but today is more towards the graphic design side of Photoshop. So we'll be dealing with shapes, colors, lines, text, the brush tool, things like that. And those tools, combined with photos, will help you make a finished product. So for today I'm making a poster, but you can make flyers, you can make cards, maybe like a Christmas card or a engagement invitation, something like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun, but we do encourage you to be creative and to make your own work. So I'm going to pick certain images and text and fonts and stuff, but you are welcome to pick whatever suits your fancy so that you can make a finished project that you like and that maybe you could actually use. So we're going to start from scratch. We're going to go to File, New. We have no class files for today. Just going to work on a blank canvas. So I'm going to rename this My Poster, not My Poser. Poster. Okay, document type. If you click in that drop-down menu, we have a lot of options which are worth looking at. So for example, the US paper has a tabloid, legal, and letter option. Pretty nifty. But we're actually going to use the custom document type because we want to use a custom width and height. So I'm going to make a pretty big poster. I want it to be 22 inches width by 28 inches height. And make sure that your drop down to the right says inches. The default might be pixels or something else, but you want it to be on inches. And then if you had to change that from pixels to inches, you might want to go back and make sure it says 22 and 28, because sometimes it'll change that. Okay, the resolution. Right now it's at 300 pixels per inch, or PPI. That is a good resolution for something you want to print. So you want to have your output in mind. If in the end you want to print your product, then you'll want it to be 300 ppi. But if you want to publish it onto your website or Facebook or something, anything for a screen is going to be 72 ppi. Now I'm actually going to pretend that I'm going to print this, so I'm going to change it back to 300, but just note that if you're going to make something available to people on the web or something, it's going to be shown on a screen and not paper. You'll want 72. Okay, now the color mode right below the resolution is another really important part of your document. So you'll want to change this according to your output as well. We have two main color modes that we deal with and that you should be familiar with. We have RGB and CMYK. So I'm going to show you a little picture I found of those two color modes. So RGB stands for red, green, and blue, and added together in the middle you'll see white. So they make white. CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I know it's not B, it's just K, but it means black. And added together, cyan, magenta, and yellow make black. CMYK is made with ink used in a printer. RGB is made with light, so the pixels on your screen, on your iPad or your iPhone or whatever. So you always want to think, am I going to print this or am I going to publish this? And then change your color mode accordingly. Ours is going to be printed. I'm going to change this to CMYK. And what consequences would there be if you had the wrong color mode, you might ask? Well, I've had this happen to me before where I work in RGB and then I go to the printer and I get it printed and the colors look weird and I'm like, what happened? That's not what it looks like on my screen. Well, that's because the printer doesn't use RGB, it uses CMYK, and so it converted my colors, and they don't always convert nice and cleanly, and so it looked weird. So certain colors will change their shade or their hue because they weren't converted before. Okay, I'm going to leave everything else the way it is. Let's go ahead and press OK. Okay, so we have our blank canvas. Now we want to unlock our layer. Click on the padlock in your layers panel. And then let's talk about shapes. So if you go down near the bottom of your toolbar on this rectangle and you right click, you'll see all the different shape tools we have. Rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon line, custom shape. So let's just play with the rectangle tool for a minute. Go ahead and click and drag on your canvas and you'll get a rectangle. So the default is to fill it with black with no stroke, but up here in the control bar, if you click on the black swatch, you can change the color. So I'm going to give it a light gray. And this box with the red line through it means no fill. Or if you're on the stroke, which is right next to the fill over here, it means no stroke. So right now we have no stroke. If you wanted one, you just have to select a color, and you won't be able to see it too clearly right now because if you go to the right of the stroke swatch, it's only 1 pixel wide right now. So we can change that thickness to like maybe 7 pixels or something. That's still pretty small. Let me just increase the slider. There we go. Maybe you want like a border around your rectangle. Okay, I'm going to make it pretty thick because actually I think I'm going to expand this rectangle to be my background of my poster. Okay, so another way to drop a rectangle onto your canvas is just to click. Instead of clicking and dragging, if you just click once, it'll ask you the width and height of your shape, and then if you want to draw it from the center or not. So I can press OK and it'll drop another shape that way. But I don't want that, so I'm just going to hit delete. But I do want to teach you a couple shortcuts. So if you're clicking and drawing your shape, don't release your mouse yet. So draw your shape and then hold Shift. It snaps to a perfect square. And this will work for several of the tools. For the ellipse tool, for the rounded rectangle, polygon, stuff like that. So that'll make it have perfect proportions equal to each other. Okay, I'm going to release Shift. And now hold spacebar. I'm still holding my mouse down. I haven't released my left click. I can move my shape to get it in the right place by holding spacebar. Now if I want to resize it again and I have it in the place that I want, if I want it right in this corner for example, then I would release spacebar and then just drag it out again. Okay. The last tool, we'll see if it works. Recently my laptop has been a little weird with this modifier key. If you hold Alt and click and drag, it'll draw your shape from the center. So instead of the corner like it was before, it'll draw from the center, which is kind of nice if you're hoping to aim for a certain part of your document. Yeah, that's doing weird things. Again, my computer is a little weird. So I'm going to undo that. I do want you to notice your layers panel. There are 2 new layers that were automatically created because we dropped these shapes onto our canvas. So Photoshop will automatically add a new layer for text or shapes or lines, things like that. And that's really nifty, so we don't have to constantly be adding our own new layer, which you can do just right by this trash can. That little sticky note will add a new blank layer, just so you know. You'll also notice, if you look really closely, in the bottom right corner of the thumbnail of the layer, you'll see a little icon, and that means that, oh, here, I'm zooming in a little bit. Hopefully you can see that little icon right there. That means that this is a vector layer. So previously we've worked with rasters, and that means that we're dealing with pixels, but This vector layer is actually not made of pixels. It's made of mathematical formulas that draw paths between anchor points. So I'm going to zoom back out. Let me show you what I mean. I'm zooming into the corner of this rectangle I made. It's not getting pixelated. It looks like it's made of pixels, but that's just because our resolution is at 300 ppi, so it does have pixels, but it's not made of pixels. So it's always going to be sharp and crisp. It's not going to get pixelated because there are mathematical formulas drawing paths between the anchors. So that's just what that means, which is nice that it has vector layers because it means we'll always have high quality shapes and text. Okay, let's go ahead and delete this layer though. I don't really want that. Now let's move on to the next tool. Right click on the rectangle tool and go to the rounded rectangle tool. So it has little rounded corners. If you want to increase the roundedness of the corners, roundness I guess, go over here to your properties panel. If it's not open for you, you just have to click on this icon with the little cube in the top left corner. That's your properties panel, the same panel we used for our adjustment layers. And if you go to near the bottom, it has the corners here, and you can change them. So I can change this to 600 pixels. Now it's way more round than it was. So you can change the radii there. Another way to do it is if you just click instead of clicking and dragging on your canvas, they ask you what you want the radii to be right here. Okay, pretty cool. You can also make one corner, you can change the roundness individually of the other corners. So if I unclick this link and I just change this one to 0, it'll have a sharp top right corner. Alright, I'm going to move on to the ellipse tool. So go ahead and select that. And it's just going to draw an ellipse or a circle. If you hold shift, it'll make a perfect circle. And if you hold spacebar, you can move it around to the right place. You can hold shift and spacebar at the same time. Totally fine. Oh, my stroke is so big, it's just a black circle. So that's the ellipse tool. Pretty basic. Right click on the ellipse tool and go to the polygon tool. So this one I have actually modified to have 100 sides, so it looks like a circle. But let me change that. Up in the control bar, you'll probably have like 5 sides, a pentagon, as your default. So I'll just change that back to 5. And I can move that around. If you hold shift, it'll actually snap it to be straight instead of like diagonal and moving around crazy. So shift does something different in that case. It doesn't keep it perfect, because actually the polygon tool is always going to be perfect. The sides will all equal each other, but shift will make it straight. Okay. Now, if you want a triangle, you just have to change the sides to 3. And now we have a triangle. Okay. I'm going to right click on the polygon tool and move on to the line tool. So this one's really easy. It's just a line, and you can change the stroke to make it a super thick line if you want. But it's really good for formatting your document and like using text with lines. It looks really nice, I think. So like some people, graphic designers, will put the line here and here, and then put like a text box in between and make a fancy little invitation or something that way. Anyways, the line tool, if you hold shift, will snap to 0 degrees, 45 degrees, or 90 degrees. So it'll snap in 45-degree increments. So you can get a good angle. That's pretty nifty. And then finally the custom shape tool. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete all of these shapes. I've just made a mess of my document. Drag them to the trash. Okay, now we have some space. The custom shape tool, if you go to the control bar, has several shapes in this box right here. If I click on the drop down, it gives me a library. Yours will look a little different, probably like this. And these are kind of just random little symbols, but if you want more, you can go to this little gear in the top right, and we have categories. We have animals, arrows, artistic textures. Pretty cool. So I'm going to click on nature, and it asks me if I want to replace or append these shapes. Appending just means adding to the list, so I'm going to click append. Let's see what it gave me. Oh, we've got flowers, snowflakes. Cool. So then I would just click on that shape and draw it. There's my snowflake. Okay. Hopefully you're feeling comfortable with shapes. We're going to move on. So I'm just going to go back to the rectangle tool actually, and I'm going to delete this snowflake. And I'm going to adjust the size of this other rectangle that I have. So to do that, make sure you're selected on the layer with the object you want to resize, and use the keyboard shortcut Control T. If you don't like shortcuts, you can go to Edit, Transform. Free transform, sorry. Control T is just a really good shortcut though. I use it all the time. Okay, so I'm going to drag these bounding boxes to the corners of my document, and I'm just going to make this like my background. Go ahead and accept the changes when you're ready by hitting this check mark in the top in your control bar, or hitting enter on your keyboard. And then I'm going to zoom out. Great, it looks exactly how I want it to look. I'm also going to go ahead and lock this layer actually, because I want this rectangle, my background, to stay in place. I don't want to move it by accident. Click on the little padlock. There we go. Now it won't move. Okay, let's move on from shapes now. Let's go into text. So your type tool is right near your rectangle tool, just two tools above it, the big T, and you can either click and drag to make a text box, or you can just click. That would work as well. And think of your caption or your title, whatever, for your poster. I'm going to do an Audrey Hepburn movie night. And I'm going to hit enter between Hepburn and movie to make it 2 lines. I'm actually going to change this to movie marathon. Oops. Okay. A quick way to move your text is to just hover outside of your text box and your cursor will change. See how right now it's the insertion point cursor, but then it changes to the move tool. I can just click and drag and move it that way. Okay, so now go ahead and select your text. My computer's being very slow, I'm sorry. And then up in your control bar, right now, I'm at Myriad Pro. That's my font. I can change that by clicking on the drop down and just hovering over these different fonts. It'll give me a preview, which is really convenient. I'm going to go with Niagara Engraved. I think it looks classy like Audrey. And I have no other variations of this font, so there's no bold or italics for this particular font. If I click on the drop down though and change it back to Myriad Pro, notice that to the right you have regular, and if you click on that drop down, there's all kinds of variations. Bold, italic, bold, semi-bold. So a really high quality font will have those variations, but this one just doesn't. Probably because it would look kind of weird if it was italicized. Okay, now your size is right next to the bold and the italics and everything. I can just click on the drop down and change my size there, but it only goes to 72, so usually I just end up typing it in, or you can click and drag on this T icon, the two T's, click and drag to the right to make it bigger, and to the left to make it smaller. If you are a keyboard shortcut person, then Control Shift greater than sign or Control Shift less than sign will also change your font size, but not as fast as sliding up on the T icon. Okay, you also have your alignment options. You can do it left aligned or right aligned or centered right here. And then we also have the color. So if you click on this swatch, you can change it from black to whatever color you want. Now, I want you to notice that when you move this slider around, especially in the greens, for me at least, you get this warning sign over here. I'll zoom in real quick. Right here, there's this little warning sign, and if I slide up or down, it's not there. So those are safe colors. They are in CMYK, and they'll print exactly how I see them, except for this one. This one's a warning too. So occasionally you'll get this. You'll get this little warning sign, and that's saying, if we hover over it, warning, out of gamut for printing. So this color will try to match to CMYK, or sorry, to the printer ink and everything, but it may not always look exactly how you want it. So just so you're aware, it's safer to pick colors that are not that little warning sign. Okay, I'm going to go with this. Press OK. Now, if I want my lines to be closer together, it's called leading in typography terms. I can change that by going to Window, Character. And then in the character panel, I'm going to select my text. And you should be able to change your leading right here. Oops, I made it way too close together. Okay, looks like I'm going to have to fix this manually. I'll change it to 162. Okay, that's closer together. Let's do 172. Great. Okay, that looks a little better to me. It was a little too far apart before. Okay, so go ahead and make your title, and then we are going to add a line. So if you're not ready, go ahead and pause the video, but if you're ready to move on, let's continue. I'm going to go back to my shape tool, right click on my rectangle tool, and change it to the line tool. Now I'm just going to add a line below my text, and I'm going to hold shift to keep it perfectly horizontal. And I'm going to increase my stroke. Stroke can be kind of funny. Sometimes it doesn't change when you want it to. It's a little funky. It could also just be this weird computer. Let's try this again. I'm going to increase my stroke beforehand. Still super thin. Okay, something is obviously just wrong with this computer, but it should increase the thickness as you increase this slider. Okay, and then you'll also probably, maybe not, but I kind of like it, you'll want one on top. So what I'll do is go to my Move tool, hold Alt, and click and drag that line until it's exactly above my other line, and notice the pink lines. Those are smart guides. They're telling you that right now it's lining up perfectly with my other line. If I go over here, the smart guides to the right disappear, so it's not lined up. But here they do. Okay, and I'll let go. And now I have an exact copy on top. And obviously I didn't really center everything, so I would probably just move everything over a little bit. Probably move my text. Click on my text layer, shift it over just a little. Oh look, there's a guide in the middle telling me it's perfectly in the center. I should have followed that earlier. Now I'll move this one. There we go. And I'll move this line. Perfect. Now it's exactly centered. I know because of those smart guides. Notice that you can also make your own smart guides, or not smart guides, but your own personal guides, by going to View, Rulers, and then you'll have these rulers on the top and to the left of your document, and you can click and drag from the rulers to your document to drop guides. So if you need margins or something, you could just drop these guides, and then you would know where to place your images or your text or whatever. To take them off, you just click and drag them right back to the ruler. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's move on. I want to talk about fonts a little bit. Go ahead and go to a web browser, and if you just Google free fonts, you'll get a ton of fonts that you can just download and use. Google Fonts is great, but I'm going to go to Font Squirrel and just show you this feature they have. If you are looking at a magazine or a website and you're like, oh, that's a great font, I want that, like the Harry Potter text or something, you can go to Font Identifier here in Font Squirrel and put in the image, upload it, or put in the URL, and they'll try to match it to a font. And then you can download that font, well, depending on if it costs $600 or not, and you can use that font. So that's a nifty tool I really like. You can also honestly just Google it, so free Harry Potter font. There are 6 free Harry Potter fonts. So I'm going to walk you through the process of downloading and installing a font, because I think it's a really useful tool when you're building non-photo-based creations. My internet is being a little slow. Let's say I just want this one that I actually can't see, because I think it is free. This font is free for personal use, yes. Okay, I'm going to download it. And then open up the zipped folder. And I want the TTF file. So if you look down here, it says it's a true type font file. That's a TTF. That should be the extension at the end. Okay, so I'm going to double click on that and just click on Install right here. Okay, now I'm going to close out of here, close out of this window, and I'm back in Photoshop. Obviously, I'm not actually going to use the Harry Potter font for this Audrey Hepburn movie marathon poster, but I want to show you just the process of installing a font and using it. I'm going to make a text box, and in my fonts drop down, I'm going to search for, oh, I forgot what it was called. It's not Harry Potter apparently. Oh, it's called Perry Hodder. I didn't even notice that. Okay, so I'm going to click on that, and then there we go. Harry Potter. My computer is moving at like 1 mile per minute, and so it's not even registering when I double type things. So the R and the T were missing. Okay, there we go. That's how you install and use a font. It just goes automatically into your menu in Photoshop, which is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and delete that though, because I actually don't want that. And then now would be a good time to save, because we worked kind of hard on this poster. So I'm just going to save it to my desktop. You can go to File, Save, or you can just hit Control S. Press OK. Phew, we're saving. Go ahead and let's put an image in here. So I'm going to Google search for a picture of Audrey Hepburn, but I actually lied. I already did Google search it, and so I have it right here. Go ahead and pause the video and look for a photo you want to use in your poster. Okay, I'm going to right click on my image, save image as, and go to maybe my desktop, save it there, and now I'm going to show it in folder and just drag it to Photoshop. Now you could just drop it straight into Photoshop, into this document, and it would just go right on top, but I want to show you how to pull it in from another document, so I'm going to put it into a new document. Okay, I'm going to unlock this layer and Control J to duplicate it. Now I actually want to make some edits to this photo. I think it's a great photo, but I think that for my purposes, her face could be more contrasty. Right now it's kind of mid-tone heavy, if that makes sense. The grays of her face are just kind of bland, and I want the highlights to pop out more. So I'm going to add a curves adjustment layer. And I'm just going to increase those highlights a little bit. There we go. That's looking a lot better to me. I could increase contrast by dropping the shadows too. There we go. Now it looks a lot better, I think. So the next thing we want to do is get rid of this background, because we want to drop it onto this poster, but with those white corners, it's going to look not great. So to do that, we've already learned the tools, but let's click on our layer with the image on it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the visibility of the bottom layer. Okay, I'm going to select my background. So I prefer to use the quick selection tool, but for your purposes, maybe the polygonal tool is good, or the magic wand tool. I don't know. You can use whatever you want to select that background. And then I also want this little tiny section in her hair. Don't forget holding Alt and Shift to add and subtract from your selections. Unless you're using the Quick Selection tool, that one will automatically add. Okay, looks great. So now I'm going to select the inverse because actually if I mask this right now, it's going to mask her out and keep the background. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to click on mask. Oh no, Audrey's gone. That's not what we want. Control Z. We want to select the inverse. So I'm going to hit Control Shift I. Or you can right click, select inverse. And now that she's selected, we can hit the mask button in your layers panel, at the bottom of your layers panel, and it'll just mask out the background. Awesome. Now, I want to bring this image into my other document. Problem is, right now I have this curves layer that's adjusting the settings, adjusting the brightness of the layer underneath, and so I want to bring both of them in. So to do that, I'm just going to, there are two ways to do this. I could combine these layers, select both of them, right click, merge layers, and now they're just one, but that's slightly destructive because I can't adjust my mask. And I don't know if you did the curves adjustment or you did color balance maybe. I don't know what adjustments you picked, but you'll want to combine them so that they actually apply. Now I'm going to click and just drag it to my other document tab. And then if you hold Shift, it'll go right in the center. Okay, way too tiny. So I need to transform it. Control T. Gonna make it much larger, and hopefully the image is large enough that it can handle this resolution and the size and not get pixelated. I guess we'll find out. I do have a border that is very dark, so it blends in with this Photoshop background here. I'm going to press Enter to accept my changes. Okay, and this is where it's too bad that our mask is gone because we would want this white stuff around her to be taken out. So instead you could go in with the eraser tool, and this is extremely destructive. So it works like a brush, and you just click and drag to erase pixels. You can decrease the hardness up here in the control bar, and that'll help it to be a little softer. Okay, it's not going to be perfect, it's okay. Alright, let's move on. We have our image in there, looks pretty great. She always looks great. And if your image was pixelated, it probably just wasn't a high quality image. So let me just show you real quick how to get a high quality image. I should have shown you this before. When you're in Google Images, and you go to search tools, you can actually search for a certain size. So I always say large because I want a high quality, good photo. And then those can be enlarged and still look good and not pixelated. You can even look for a certain type. So a photo, a face, clip art. You can also filter by licensing. So I labeled for non-commercial reuse with modification. I filtered for only those images so that I don't get in trouble for putting this on YouTube. Another thing you can do, if you don't want the background in your image at all and you don't want to like select it and get rid of it yourself, you can actually just in the search bar search for file type :PNG, and that will usually have a lot more options. See, Audrey Hepburn is a weird search for that, so let me change this to let's see, it's Thanksgiving for me, so turkey file type PNG. Okay, now it only gives me the PNG files. So if I click on this turkey here, view image, well, you can't really tell it doesn't have a background, but here you can see the checkerboard. I wouldn't have to make a selection and mask it out myself because it's already done. Okay, so that's just a fun fact. Alright, this is looking pretty good. Now let's say we want a quote by Audrey Hepburn just somewhere down here and maybe have it on top of a shape like a rectangle. That might look kind of nice. So I'm going to go ahead and add my text. Click on my type tool, and I'm just going to put in this quote. Oh, it is much too large. Let me just make it a lot smaller. Okay. Okay, not too bad. I want to change my leading though. The space between the two lines is a little too large for me, so I'm going to go back in. There we go. And go to my character panel again and decrease the leading. Okay, that looks better. I'm going to add my rectangle. So I'm going to go to my rectangle tool and just going to put one right here. And I'm actually going to move this layer to be below my text layer so that the text is actually showing. There we go. And I don't want a black square, rectangle I mean, so I'm going to go back and change this. And I don't want a stroke either, so I'll just take that right off. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, now this is where I use opacity. I don't want it to be so solid because I kind of want her shirt to show through. So I'm going to go to the opacity in my layers panel. So if you look right here, it says opacity. I can just click on that drop down and decrease it with the slider. And let's see how that looks. I like that. If it's a little too much for you or whatever, you can always adjust that. And now I might also see what happens if I adjust the opacity of the text, because that might have been a little too white for me. I think that looks a little better. So now you'll probably want to put the information of your event or whatever in this space right here. So go ahead and do that, but I think for now I'm just going to leave it like it is. So I really like this poster, especially after I put the information for the event here, but that would just be a waste of time in this video because I've already taught you how to do text, so you don't have to watch me do that. I'm going to go File, Save. That will save a file as a PSD file format. So that's a Photoshop document, and it'll preserve all these layers in your layers panel, and it'll look just like it is, and you can always come back and edit anything you have worked on. So that's a very important thing to do. And then, once you're done with that, you'll also want to export this and save it as a JPEG or a TIFF, and that way you can take it to the printer and they will be able to print it. So go to File, Save As, and just change this type from Photoshop to JPEG or TIFF. TIFF will also work. Notice that TIFF saves the layers. If you have this checked right here in the bottom, you can save all the layers in the TIFF file format. So that's a very high quality file format. Generally though, JPEG is good enough for printing purposes, and then you would hit save. I'm not going to do that because I'm not quite ready for that. But now let's move on, and there are a couple more things I want to show you, but they're not going to be super cohesive with this poster, so we're just going to make a new document. So Control N, and then just press OK. We don't really care what size it is right now. We just want a blank canvas. Okay, I'm going to unlock this layer, and we have used this tool before with masks, but now we're going to use it for more artsy purposes, I guess. The brush tool. Go ahead and click on that, and then in the top in the control bar you'll notice you have your size that you can slide around. You have your hardness, which I will show you in a second. I'll show you what that does. And then we have a mode. These are blending modes, which will interact differently with the layers underneath, but we're not going to use those because we don't have any other layers. Opacity, you can make it a little more transparent if you bring that down. And then our color is down here in the bottom left, because remember with masks we used black and white. Well, now we can just click on this swatch and change the color if we'd like. Or you can change it over here to the right in your color panel. Okay, let's play with size and hardness. So we all know size. We can increase it using the bracket, the right bracket key, and then decrease the size using the left bracket. So go ahead and get comfortable with that. Okay, now look at this brush. I have a very soft edge, so my hardness is pretty low. Yeah, look, it's at 33%, fairly low. If I bring this all the way up, let's take a look at that. Super hard, so my edges are just crisp. And generally, I guess it depends on your purposes, but I tend to use a softer brush. So this is a super soft brush. If it's at 0, really soft. So it's just feathering that edge of the brush. It looks like it's making it smaller, but it's really not. It's just got a lot of feathering. Okay, so that is your hardness and size. If you look below hardness, we have a few different brushes. There are some interesting ones down here. We have some pencils. So we do have more of these brushes down here. Let's go to our brush panel. So to do that, we just need to click on this icon up here to the right of the brush size. This icon right here. And when you click on that, your brush panel will appear. And I've made mine really, really big. You can do that by just dragging the sides open more. And let's see. I'm going to change my brush back to my normal brush. Now, up in brush tip shape, we have all those options that we saw, and we can change the size right in this panel, and we can change the hardness as well. And then this one is cool, the spacing down at the bottom. If I scroll down and use this grass tool, it just makes grass. Oh, my brush is way too small. Let's just make that bigger. There we go. Okay, there's my grass. Let's, for the sake of it, just make it green. Okay, here's my green grass. Beautiful. I can actually space out this grass more by increasing the spacing. So now it'll be a little more sparse. Or I can make it super close together, have really thick grass. Cool. Okay, let's all, just for fun, let's all go to this maple leaf brush and play with this one for a bit. Go to a blank section of your canvas so we can have some area to work with. And right now it looks a little bit lame. It's just a bunch of maple leaves all going in the same direction. You can't even really tell they're maple leaves. So let's increase the spacing. That's a little better. Now we can tell it's a maple leaf. Okay, I'm going to change the color again because now it's starting to look like cannabis. Let's do yellow. Okay. Now, let's go down to scattering. So it's just this third option down in this list. And the brush panel has so many options for adjusting and customizing your brush. It's kind of crazy. In scattering, we can increase the scatter, just drag that slider, and now they're not just in a straight line, they're kind of moving all over the place, and that makes it look a lot more natural. And you can also increase the count, so now there's just leaves on top of each other, lots more. So that's also fun. Okay, now let's try a different customization option in this list. Let's do color dynamics. Click on that, and then this is how you can change the color of individual leaves in one single brush stroke. So I'm going to change this to apply per tip. I'm going to check that box right at the top, and then below that there's the foreground background jitter. We don't need to worry about that. Let's do the hue jitter. So change the hue jitter from 0 to any number. I'm just going to go to like 30. That might be a little too strong, but we'll figure out and change it later if it is. Okay, then saturation jitter is going to be how much the leaves change in saturation. Just boost that up a little bit. And then brightness jitter is how much it jitters with brightness. Just boost that a little bit for fun. And I'm going to change the color of my leaves to an orangey red. We'll see what happens. Okay, I'm going to try drawing now. Wow. So I've got a lot of green, I got some pink. If I really wanted to have fall colors, which was what I was going for, I probably wouldn't want such a variation in hue. So I might go back and change this hue jitter to maybe 15-ish. Okay, let's try that. Okay, now we're not getting the greens, that's good. They're looking a little dead. I might change the saturation. And I'm just making a mess of this canvas, but that's okay, we're just experimenting. So much fun, right? So there are so many customization options in this brush panel that we can definitely not go over them all, but those were a couple of my favorites. You're welcome to explore the other ones though. Okay, I'm going to close this panel by hitting the double arrows in the top right of the panel. And now that I have this very abstract piece of art, I'm going to go back to my poster. So I couldn't think of too many applications with brushes with this poster just because I'm not very creative, I think. But I was thinking maybe we could put like a shadow behind her, or we could even put like a blue glow coming out of her, or maybe a different color because we have a lot of blue and purpley hues in this. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. And I'm going to drag this layer to below the image where she is on, because we want this to be behind her, not on top of her. And with my brush tool, I'm definitely not going to be painting with these maple leaves, so I'm going to switch it back to a normal brush, maybe a soft one, and probably change my size because that's looking a little small. Yeah, that's too small. There we go. And then I can pick a color. So in this case, I'm thinking I'm going to try the shadow first, the black or grayish shadow. So I'm going to actually use the eyedropper tool to select a color from this image. So I'm going to select the black from her shirt by holding Alt, and then my cursor will change to an eyedropper, and I just click once to suck up that color. Now it's in my eyedropper, and see how my swatch changed? Now I'm using black. And now I go back to my normal brush, I let go of Alt, large, so I can draw a big shadow. And I'm going to change my opacity. If your opacity is at 100, you're going to want it to be a lot lower for the shadow, because you don't want just a solid black shadow. You want it to be a little transparent. Okay, now I'm going to start to paint the shadow. I can see on her face that the light is coming from, if I am photographing her, it's coming from my right. See how it's light right here, but then she has shadows on the right side of her face, our left. So the light is right over here, and so the shadow is going to fall right over here. That was probably a little too big. But that'll give us an opportunity to learn the eraser tool. Your eraser tool is a couple tools below your brush tool, and we can just increase the brush size. It works just like a brush, but it erases stuff. And then I want it to be super soft, 0 hardness. And I would just go in and cut that back a little bit if I need to. Okay. So there's one way to do it. You'd probably also need a little shadow here, just to make it look a little more natural. Okay, that looks kind of interesting. Let's see what it looks like if we just put a huge shadow all the way around her. And then I'm going to go to my layer and just decrease the opacity in the layers panel. So that kind of separates her from the background. But I'm not sure I like that too much. So let's try something else. I'm going to turn off the visibility of that layer. And let's make another layer just to the left of the little trash can in the bottom right corner of your layers panel. There's a little sticky note, and that's how you make a new layer. And then on this layer, let's try a different color. I'm just going to try a blue for now. See how that looks. And I'm just going to put it all around her, because this isn't a shadow, so it can go anywhere. Okay, it's a different effect, kind of interesting. Once again, you can go into your layers panel and just decrease the opacity if it was too strong for you. And that just kind of adds a fun element to the poster, I think. That's all we're going to do with the poster for now. Let's go back to our canvas. I'm going to show you one more tool that I forgot to mention earlier with the brush tool, there's one more customization that I like to do with the maple leaves. So I'm going to go back to my brush and change it back to that maple leaf. Make it a lot smaller. Okay, so right now, if I draw, all of those maple leaves are going straight up and down. I can actually change that though in my brush panel, so I'll click on that, and in Shape Dynamics, I can change it with the angle jitter. Right in the middle, there's an angle jitter option, and you can move that slider, and now the leaves will go in all directions, because that's how they would naturally fall, right? Okay, I just wanted to show you that one more customization there. And let's talk about layer styles. So if you look at our document in our layers panel, we have all these different layers with different elements on them, but sometimes you might want to add certain effects to certain layers. So for example, the title here, I could add drop shadows on all the letters, and that would make it look kind of cool in 3D. And then around Audrey Hepburn, actually, I could have given her a glow within layer styles instead of painting that kind of fake glow around her. I can make things bevel and emboss, make them look 3D. So let's go into layer styles. To do that, we just need to double click on a layer, try to click on the empty gray space of a layer and not on the icon or on the text. And then you should get this layer styles box that pops up. We have a ton of options. If you look to the left, these are all your different options. So kind of similar to when we were dealing with brushes and customizing them. If you click on a certain effect, it'll turn it on, and then you can customize it further and adjust all the sliders and everything within that effect. So I can go and bevel and emboss this box, this purpley blue box that I have with my quote in it. I can increase the depth of this bevel. Here, let me just zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So I can increase the depth, and that's kind of affecting my box over here. You can't see too well, but oh well. And then I can increase the size or decrease it, and that changes the beveling as well. I can soften it. You have a ton of options. So that's bevel and emboss. You can also change it from inner bevel to outer bevel, or emboss, or pillow emboss. I don't know what that is. But those are your different options. Let's try a few more of my favorites. Let's do the outer glow. This is what we could have done with Audrey instead of giving her that fake painted one. I've already changed the color a little bit previously, but it should be just a default white or something. But I picked a blue, and then I can change the opacity, make it a little stronger. It's not showing up too well here, so I'd probably make the opacity stronger. And then I would, let's see, maybe increase the size. Yeah, just kind of play around with these different options. Hopefully I'm not making you sick by like moving the screen around like this. Okay, last one is the drop shadow. I like this one a lot. It works really well with text or different elements just to separate them and give them that 3D look and make them pop out more so that it catches your eye. So naturally it's going to be black for your color, but you can change that if you'd like. This angle here is asking where your light is coming from, so I can change the angle of light. Let me first add a drop shadow. Let's see. Oh, I can see it right here. My glow is just getting in the way. Let me just turn off that outer glow for now. There we go. The spread will make it go out farther and less feathered. I do want it feathered though. I like it soft. Distance so it can be farther away from my object. And let's check out this angle now. Yeah, it totally changes. So it's the direction of your light. So like we were saying earlier with Audrey's face, the direction was actually coming from around here. So I would probably keep the shadow of this box going in the same direction. Okay. I think that is all I wanted to show you with the layer styles. There are so many more options though, so please go ahead and explore those. But for now, I'm good with that. Maybe I'll check the outer glow just so that we have one extra layer style on there. Press OK. And now if you look below our layer, we have those effects there, and we can turn them on and off with the little eyeballs. So I can turn off that outer glow here. And now it's gone. If you want to just turn off all of the effects, I would just hit the eyeball next to effects, and that'll turn them all off. So that's layer styles. You just double click on the layer. The last thing we're going to learn today is clipping masks. So we've worked with masks before, but clipping masks are a little different. They're going to be just between two layers. There is no layer mask with the black and the white. It's just going to apply the first layer to the layer underneath it. So let me show you what I mean. I went ahead and Googled some images of clipping masks. So this is a good one. Putting the beach in the text. It's just two layers in Photoshop with a clipping mask on them. We're actually going to do something like this. It's a cool one. So those are some cool examples. And we are going to make our own. So go ahead and actually search for a couple images. I'm going to search for water and fire. Okay, once you're ready, go ahead and open those up in Photoshop. And you can even put them on the same document. It doesn't matter too much. I'm just going to Control T to resize this so I can fit my other fire picture on here. Okay. Okay, it's alright if they're overlapping a little bit because we're just going to put clipping masks on them anyways. So there will be parts of your image that will not show. I'm going to make clipping masks so we have text that says water and has water showing through it, and then fire with fire showing through it. So I'm going to go ahead and just make some text. So we're going to go to our type tool, the horizontal type tool, and type fire, and then make a separate text box for water. And you can do this with any picture that you have. If it's a picture of yourself and you want to put your name as the text, whatever. Okay, I want another text box here. Water. Now, my font is probably not in your library. It's a downloaded font, but a good font to use for this might be Impact. Impact has nice bold text. Yeah, I'll just change mine to Impact as well. Okay, now place it over your water or your fire, and then just, oh my goodness, sorry, my mouse won't release sometimes. Okay, and then just adjust the size of your text. Alright, that one looks good. Now I need to do my fire one a little bigger. Okay, so now we have our text and we have our images. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that is. Probably a message that this computer is breaking. Let's move our text layers below our image layers. So the fire is going to go under the fire, and the water text is going to go under the water picture. Okay, now they're hidden. This is where we implement our clipping masks. So if you click on the fire layer, or the first image layer that you have, go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. There it is. Now let's do the same for our water. Create Clipping Mask. And that's how easy a clipping mask is. Congratulations! You have completed the Photoshop Essentials course, and hopefully now you feel comfortable editing photos and creating your own posters and such in Photoshop. And as always, we are on the 4th floor of the library. We're in the Media Center right by the Multimedia Lab, and we're just sitting at our desks waiting for you to come ask us questions and ask for help on your projects. So please continue to come to our classes, and if you're into this poster creating stuff like visual graphics and things, I would recommend our Illustrator class where you can create your own vector images and logos and stuff. And then I would also recommend our InDesign class if you're interested in making publications like magazine spreads and such. Learning all these tools will really help you in the future with several projects that you might encounter. So thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again.